The steady beep of the heart monitor was the only sound in my hospital room. My body ached, but the emotional pain was far worse. I stared at my phone, reading the text message for the 100th time. I can't handle this anymore. Don't try to find me. My name is Sophie Anderson, and at 32, I lay in the ICU while my husband of 8 years vanished with our life savings, leaving me to face a critical health crisis alone. It started with what I thought was a severe migraine. I'd been getting headaches for months, but Marcus, my husband, always dismissed them. "You're just stressed from work," he'd say, barely looking up from his phone. But this time was different. The pain was unbearable, and my vision started blurring. I called Marcus at work, my voice shaking. "I need you to take me to the hospital." There was a long pause before he answered. "I'm in an important meeting. Can't you call an Uber?" That should have been my first clue. By the time I got to the emergency room, I could barely stand. The doctors moved quickly. Words like aneurysm and immediate surgery floated around me. Through my haze of pain, I heard them trying to contact Marcus. He wasn't answering. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, my neurologist, was the first person to show real concern beyond my medical condition. "Your husband should be here," she said firmly, her eyes narrowing as she checked my admission forms. "Have you been experiencing any unusual stress at home?" I didn't answer. How could I explain that Marcus had become increasingly distant over the past year? That our joint accounts had seen some strange transfers I couldn't question because he always handled our finances? The surgery was scheduled for the next morning. I spent that night alone, sending unanswered texts to Marcus. My in-laws, Barbara and George, finally showed up around midnight. "No, Marcus. He's just overwhelmed, sweetie." Barbara patted my hand, her perfectly manicured nails gleaming under the hospital lights. "Men sometimes struggle with medical situations. You know how sensitive he is." Sensitive. Right. Like when he was sensitive about my promotion last year and didn't speak to me for a week because I'd be earning more than him. The morning of my surgery, I checked my phone one last time. Still nothing from Marcus. But there was an alert from our bank. Multiple large transfers had been made in the past 24 hours. My heart started racing, setting off the monitors. Dr. Mitchell rushed in. "Sophie, you need to stay calm." She saw my phone, the bank alert still visible. Her expression hardened. "What's going on?" "He's taken everything," I whispered, the reality hitting me like a physical blow. "While I'm here, he's. That's when Barbara and George burst in. "We just got a text from Marcus," Barbara announced, her voice artificially bright. "He needs some time to think. He says he's sorry, but this is all too much for him. We need to respect his feelings." Dr. Mitchell's head snapped up. "Respect his feelings? Your son emptied their accounts while his wife needs emergency surgery?" George stepped forward, his face red. "Now see here, this is a family matter. Sophie understands, don't you, dear?" Marcus has always been sensitive about hospitals since his father's passing. Once he's had time to process. Process what? Dr. Mitchell cut in. Abandoning his wife? Stealing their money? This isn't about sensitivity. This is about crime. Barbara gasped. "Crime? Don't be ridiculous. Marcus would never. He's just confused." "Sophie, tell her you won't press charges. You know how Marcus gets when he's cornered." I lay there, tears sliding down my face, remembering all the times I'd made excuses for Marcus's sensitivity. The missed family events, the controlled finances, the subtle put-downs. Dr. Mitchell stepped between me and my in-laws. "I'm calling hospital security and the police. Mrs. Anderson is about to undergo major surgery, and she needs support, not manipulation. If you can't provide that, you need to leave." "But we're family," Barbara protested. "Family doesn't abandon someone in their darkest hour," Dr. Mitchell replied firmly. "Now, please step out. I need to speak with my patient privately." As they left, muttering about overreaction and misunderstanding, Dr. Mitchell turned to me. "Sophie, there's something else you need to know. I've seen the security footage from the hospital parking lot yesterday. Your husband was here." My heart stopped. "What?" "He came in, asked about your condition, and left immediately after speaking with the financial department. I don't think this was a panic response. I think it was planned." The monitor started beeping faster as the implications sank in. Marcus hadn't abandoned me in fear or confusion. He'd waited until I was helpless to make his move. Dr. Mitchell squeezed my hand. "We're going to postpone the surgery for a few hours. I'm calling the police, and then we're going to make sure you're protected, medically and legally. You're not alone in this, Sophie." For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe I didn't need to stay quiet and understanding anymore. Maybe it was time for someone else to do the understanding, like a judge. The days following my surgery passed in a blur of recovery and revelations. Each new discovery felt like another betrayal, another crack in the foundation of what I thought was my life. Dr. Mitchell kept her word. Before I even woke up from surgery, she had not only contacted the police, but also reached out to the hospital's legal department. The security footage showed Marcus spending nearly an hour in the hospital, methodically visiting different departments, gathering information about my condition, and making calls. Detective Lisa Torres sat beside my bed, her notebook open. "Mrs. Anderson, we've traced your husband's movements. He didn't just empty your joint accounts, he had been systematically moving money for months. The large withdrawals on the day of your admission were just the final step." I stared at the ceiling, trying to process this. How much? Close to $300,000. He also took out a second mortgage on your house 3 weeks ago using forged signatures. The heart monitor betrayed my shock. A mortgage? Forged signatures? Who was this man I'd been married to? Barbara and George appeared every day, their tactics switching between guilt and anger. "You're destroying our family," Barbara hissed one afternoon. "The police? Really, Sophie?" Marcus made a mistake, but pressing charges? That's not what loving wives do. Dr. Mitchell, who had become my unexpected guardian angel, overheard this. "And abandoning your critically ill wife is what loving husbands do," she countered, checking my vitals with deliberate focus. "Interesting family values you have there, Mrs. Carter." The investigation revealed more than just financial fraud. Marcus had been planning this for nearly a year. He had a secret apartment in another city, registered under a false name. The police found receipts for jewelry and expensive restaurants, dates with someone else while I was working overtime to contribute to what I thought was our future. One morning, Detective Torres brought in a stack of documents. "We found these in his apartment. He's been investigating medical insurance payouts for conditions similar to yours. We believe," she hesitated, sharing a look with Dr. Mitchell. "We believe he was waiting for your condition to worsen," Dr. Mitchell finished, her voice tight with controlled anger. The timing of his departure wasn't just opportunistic. He wanted you incapacitated before he made his move. The implications made me physically ill. Had he known about my condition? Had he been waiting for me to get sick enough to be helpless? George stormed into my room that evening, waving his phone. "Marcus called us. He's willing to come back if you drop all this nonsense about charges. He says he'll even split the money with you. Isn't that generous? Just stop this vindictive behavior." I looked at this man, this enabler who had helped shape his son, into someone who could abandon his wife during brain surgery, and found my voice. "Generous?" I said, sitting up straighter despite the pain. "Your son stole my money, forged my signature, and left me to die. He's not being generous. He's trying to escape consequences." "Now see here," George started, but I wasn't finished. "No, you see here. For 8 years, I've watched you and Barbara excuse everything Marcus does. His sensitivity about my career, his control over our finances, his constant need for validation. You helped create this situation by never holding him accountable." Well, guess what? Someone finally is. The room fell silent. Even the machine seemed to quiet down. "The police have everything," I continued, my voice growing stronger. "The footage, the forged documents, the evidence of premeditation. Your son didn't have a breakdown. He orchestrated this. And I'm done protecting him." George's face turned purple. "You ungrateful." "That's enough." Dr. Mitchell's voice cut through his rage. She stood in the doorway, security guards flanking her. "Mr. Carter, your presence is no longer welcome here. Please leave before I have you removed." As they escorted him out, Dr. Mitchell turned to me with a small smile. "Your latest scans look good. The surgery was successful, and your recovery is progressing well. You're stronger than I know, Sophie, much stronger." Looking at her, I realized something. In losing my husband and his family, I'd gained something unexpected. My voice, my strength, and allies who valued truth over appearances. The police have frozen Marcus's known accounts, but Detective Torres warned me that recovering everything might take time. "He's hiding money," she explained, "but we'll find it. People like him always make mistakes. They think they're too clever to get caught." I thought about Marcus, about his carefully constructed image of sensitivity and refinement. He probably expected me to stay quiet, to accept his abandonment as another example of his delicate nature. Instead, he created his own downfall. As I drifted off to sleep that night, I remembered something my grandmother used to say: the truth has a way of surfacing, like a cork in water. You can push it down, but it always rises. Marcus had pushed down his true nature for years. Now everyone would see it float to the surface. 6 months after Marcus's disappearance, I stood in my newly remodeled living room, sunlight streaming through windows that no longer held memories of his presence. The house felt different now, lighter, peaceful, mine. Detective Torres had been right about people like Marcus making mistakes. His carefully constructed escape plan had one major flaw: pride. He couldn't resist showing off his new life on social media through a fake account, posting photos of exotic locations and expensive purchases. His attempt to flaunt his freedom became his undoing. We traced the IP addresses, Detective Torres explained during her last visit. He was using a VPN, but his patterns were predictable. Every Sunday night, like clockwork, he'd post from the same location: your husband is currently enjoying his stolen funds in a luxury apartment in Miami. The arrest was surprisingly anticlimactic. No dramatic chase, no tearful confrontation. Just Marcus, in his designer clothes, being led away in handcuffs while dining at an upscale restaurant. The look of shock on his face when the police approached his table was captured by security cameras, a moment of reality crashing through his carefully constructed fantasy. Barbara and George made one final attempt to intervene, showing up at my house unannounced. He's agreed to plead guilty, Barbara said, clutching her designer handbag like a shield. But he's asking for leniency. If you speak to the judge, tell them it was all a misunderstanding. I let her words trail off into silence before responding. The only misunderstanding was my belief that you were my family. A family doesn't defend theft and attempted murder. Murder. George exploded. Now you're just being dramatic. Dr. Mitchell, who had become a close friend and was over for dinner, stepped forward. Mr. Carter, your son withdrew all financial support from his wife immediately before critical brain surgery. He forged documents, stole her money, and left her unable to pay for life-saving medical care. What would you call that? They left without an answer, and I haven't heard from them since. The legal proceedings moved swiftly. Marcus's guilty plea came with a significant sentence: 8 years for fraud, theft, and endangerment. The judge was particularly harsh after reviewing Dr. Mitchell's testimony about the timing and premeditation of his actions. The court sees this as not merely financial fraud, the judge declared, but as a calculated attempt to benefit from the defendant's wife's medical crisis. This level of betrayal and endangerment cannot be overlooked. The restitution order was substantial. Every penny had to be returned, with interest. The hidden accounts were found, the second mortgage invalidated due to fraud, and his assets liquidated. But the greatest victory wasn't financial, it was discovering my own strength. Dr. Mitchell stood by me through everything, from medical recovery to emotional healing. You know, she said one evening as we shared tea in my garden, when I first saw you in the hospital, something in your eyes told me you were a fighter. You just needed someone to fight alongside you for a change. She was right. With proper support, I flourished. My recovery exceeded expectations, and I returned to work with a new perspective and determination. The company I work for, having learned of my story, promoted me to lead their new employee wellness program, turning my experience into a way to help others. I started a support group for survivors of financial abuse, sharing my story to help others recognize the warning signs I'd missed. The subtle control, the isolation, the manipulation of sensitivity to avoid accountability. Patterns became clear in hindsight. The house that Marcus had tried to mortgage away became a symbol of my transformation. I renovated it completely, replacing every trace of our shared life with expressions of my own taste. The man cave he'd insisted on became my art studio. His precious leather recliner was donated, and in its place stood a beautiful reading nook filled with books he called wasteful purchases. 1 year after my surgery, I hosted a new beginnings party. Friends, colleagues, and my support group members gathered to celebrate not just my recovery, but my renaissance. Dr. Mitchell raised a toast that brought tears to my eyes. To Safi, she said, who reminded us that true strength isn't in enduring abuse, but in standing up to it, and to new beginnings, which sometimes look like endings until you turn the page. As I looked around at these people who had supported me, believed me, and helped me rebuild, I realized something profound. Marcus hadn't just lost money and freedom, he'd lost the chance to know the person I'd become. His absence had made room for my presence, his betrayal had led to my empowerment. That night, after everyone left, I sat in my reading nook with a glass of wine, watching the sunset through my window. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Marcus's appeals had been denied. He would serve his full sentence. I closed the alert without reading further. His story was no longer part of mine. I had a different tale to tell now, one of resilience, recovery, and renewal. Sometimes I realized being abandoned is just life's way of setting you free. I opened my laptop to work on my book, Rising Strong, A Survivor's Guide to Financial Abuse. The cursor blinked on the blank page, ready for my story to begin again, this time told in my own voice, on my own terms.